for coming on the show today, Eric Burgess. Eric is a registered provisional psychologist. He's a longtime colleague and friend, as I mentioned, and he has both personal and professional experience with working with children with disabilities and their parents. Eric Burgess has just started his practice called Restless Minds, and he's a part of the Be Mind Body therapy group in Lethbridge, Alberta. So again, thank you for coming today. Welcome, Eric.
I want to say thank you very much, Brad, for the invitation to be on your show.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity, and it's a good chance to chat once again with you, Eric. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that a lot lately with COVID and everything else.
Oh yeah, it's really put the barrier in place for everything. New type of life that we're living.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so I just want to do a quick social media plug before we get going with the show today. Again, I'm Brad Moser, registered psychologist. Please follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And we are here live on Jess FM. And you can please follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. And it's live on jessfm.ca. Again, we're here with Eric Burgess for parenting children with disabilities. My first question for you, Eric, is if you could please tell us how old your son is.
Sure. My son, he's 11 years old. He's a handful. He's a turkey. We love him to death. Just to give you a little bit of background about my son, he does have a developmental disability. In particular, he has Down syndrome. And he's in grade 5. He loves school. So being out of school right now is been a struggle for all of us here at home, as I can imagine it is for most of the parents in your audience.
Yes, absolutely. And quite a struggle for many, many people and parents as well. Having the children at home since, this is 3.5 months now at home. And of course, Lorraine doesn't help with it either. My next question for you, Eric, is what is your favorite part of being a parent?
That's a really interesting question because there's so many different parts that I appreciate about being a parent. First and foremost, it's watching this little being develop in front of your eyes. I mean, it's truly a special treat, being able to watch them develop physically and emotionally and intellectually and spiritually as well. Watching them make those first steps towards, becoming who they are as a person. Being able to honor that along the way is spectacular. It's never the same day twice as a parent, I find too. So there's always a level of excitement, no matter what's going on. The kids bring an air of energy and an air of fun, a little bit chaos too into the mix.
Absolutely, every day is an adventure.
I love being silly with my son, and my son loves being silly with me. That idea of laughing and sharing in mutual humor is something that I think really helps create a bond. And to be honest, it's something that's rewarding as well. Being able to sit back and just be yourself with your child and have your child be yourself, be themselves as well, it's really heartwarming.
Absolutely. Wow, that was a very good answer. I appreciate that you covered a lot of different bases there in one answer. It wasn't just, I like playing with my kids. It was very encompassing, so I appreciate that. So Eric, wondering if you can tell us about some of the common challenges involved with parenting children with disabilities.
Okay. Now, parenting children with disabilities, it is an extension of parenting, as would make sense. However, there are other tasks that are involved that most people won't necessarily consider. And a big one that needs to be recognized is all the extra added appointments that are involved with having a child with a disability. In terms of medical appointments, and quite often children with various types of special needs have comorbid or coexisting medical or health issues. And often those health issues need to be addressed over and above the disability. So when I think of appointments, I'm thinking of things like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech language pathology, going to pediatrician appointments, blood work, hearing assessments, vision assessments. It adds up pretty quick. And as a parent, that can be taxing, especially when you're having to deal with an employer who may or may not quite understand the reason for all the absences that are required in order to ensure that your child has services, services that he or she needs. The whole notion of what is normal, that's something that I think comes up for a lot of people in terms of that idea of comparing. And I think it's really easy to get lost in comparison when you are a parent of a child with special needs. And that comparison part is not necessarily a healthy thing. And I think part of moving forward as a parent of a child with any sort of disability is putting that comparison piece to the side and just rolling with it. And I think by focusing too much on comparison and worrying too much about developmental milestones, we lose out on the moment, the here and now, the opportunity to spend with our child. And I think that's a shame in a way. It's very easy to get caught up in the notion of comparison. I mean, I have been myself, but I think, as I mentioned, part of moving forward is trying to minimize that, turn the volume down on that comparison piece.
Yeah, so it does sound like acceptance is a big part of that, hey?
Acceptance, there's no question there. Yeah. And acceptance takes time. And along with that acceptance, there needs to be processing of feelings. Because there's a lot of feelings that come about, especially when there's an initial diagnosis, in terms of worry. What's this going to mean for my child's future? Am I going to be able to do this as a parent? Worry about finances and worry about things like independence down the road. All those sorts of things, all those different thoughts come to one's mind. And it can be really overwhelming. Along with those thoughts are the feelings associated with those worries, whether it's anger or resentment, happiness, celebration, or joy. It's important for any parent or a child with any sort of special needs to take the time to feel those feelings, and express those feelings in a safe place. Beyond that, there's little things such as everyday routines that can be quite a challenge. So, for example, a trip to a store, going on a holiday, a trip to grandma's house, even going to school. Sometimes it can seem like you're trying to launch the space shuttle in terms of the amount of equipment and reminders and steps that you're having to go through to get to that endpoint. So it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, quite a few things. I'm almost getting the sense of what you're explaining here is a lot of the challenges that all parents face. But I think when it comes to having a child with a disability, a lot of parents who are in that situation can attest that maybe it seems like it's magnified or it's exploded, like it's expanded all these challenges in a way, or it can become challenging for sure. And I'm wondering though too, like the comparison, the acceptance, the worries, like a lot of these things, like it does sound like they're very kind of typical of most parents, but when it comes to children with disabilities, it might be more of a special concerns. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, I would agree with that very much so. And you're right, all parents struggle with these issues. However, when you have a child with a disability, I would agree it is magnified. In terms of thinking about and planning for that child, that involvement, I think, goes over and above when it comes to special needs children. You can assume a certain level of independence with, I'm going to use the term neurotypical children. You can't always make that assumption about various types of special needs, though.
Right.
And as a parent, I mean, you worry, and that's natural inclination. You want what's best for your child. And sometimes wanting what's best requires a lot more the investment of energy and time and emotion to get things going.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot there, I think, for sure. And I know I just started having the idea that when you were talking about comparison and how a lot of parents nowadays have challenges with comparison of their kids when they're on social media, right? And you hear mostly when people put posts or updates on social media, it's to tell about the great things that your kids are doing or the pride moments as a parent and stuff like that. And I'm wondering too, if you have a child with a disability and you're playing a lot of comparison game, you're trying to make your kids, like putting pressure on your kids to be compare with themselves to other kids, right? Or to keep them at the same developmental stage. That could be challenging, especially on social media. And so I'm just guessing that maybe having, and maybe you'll answer this later, talk about this later, but having connections with other parents who have children with disabilities can definitely be a good thing, because you know what I mean. You have that maybe a different level of comparison in a way.
There's an innate sense of empathy that comes with interacting with other parents of children with disabilities. However, in saying that, though, I have to acknowledge that in the community in which we live, Lethbridge, there has been tremendous acceptance of my son and tremendous empathy displayed. And I think that's a shout out to the community. I want to give a shout out to the community regarding that.
Yeah.
The level of understanding and the level of being able to acknowledge my son as a person first, and treat him as a person as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to mention about the common challenges with parenting children with disabilities?
Well, another aspect that comes to mind is, as I had mentioned, the idea of energy expenditure. In my mind, and some people may agree with this, some people may not agree with this, but when I think of my son in particular, he is equivalent to parenting 2 or 3 kids.
Yeah.
In terms of, again, the preparation, in terms of the pre-teaching, in terms of the problem solving, in terms of the planning that's involved in everyday experiences. And it can get wearing on parents. And as a result, I'm a strong advocate for making use of respite care. And respite care is something that all parents, I think, struggle with. That whole notion of, okay, I'm this child's parent. This is my job. And I, in my mind, go back to that old adage, it takes an entire village to raise a child. Yeah. And I think it's important that as parents of children with special needs, we reach out and acknowledge that maybe we do need help, and that we can't do it all, and that it's okay. It's okay to seek help, and it's okay to have other people involved with your child. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then again, going back to what you said about, you appreciate in Lethbridge the acceptance, the empathy, the understanding that they're treating your son like a person. And I think by reaching out to people and reaching out to supports and your social supports, that helps with that. It helps you. I don't think you could have been there if you didn't reach out, if you kept it all to yourself. Those naturalized supports are so important. Yeah. And then family, of course, is part of that. But even reaching beyond family, I think it's that self-advocacy component. It's so important. And it's something we often, I don't want to say the word undermine, but it would be undermining unintentionally, out of pride. And sometimes out of fear too. Is this other person who may be involved with my child, are they qualified? Can I trust them? Will they understand the needs of my child? Will they understand what to do in different types of situations? And it takes a lot of courage as a parent to sort of hand your child over and say, look, I need a break for a little bit. Right. On the other hand, that break is so important. It is so critically important, because often I think all parents get lost in these different roles. There's a role of being a parent. There's a role of being a spouse or partner. There's a work role. And when you're a parent of a child with special needs, I think those roles are expanded even further. So not only am I a caregiver, not only am I a parent, but I'm also an advocate. I'm also a protector. And I'm also a problem solver. And wearing all those hats, and it expends energy and expends emotion. And I might want to put a shout out there to all parents of children with special needs, because you have to be special people to have the dedication and the perseverance to carry on. Absolutely. Yeah. So, good to lead into the next question for you, Eric. Can you talk some about the opportunities and the joys involved with parenting children with disabilities? Oh, for sure. And as I mentioned earlier on, the whole idea of with all kids, it's never the same day twice, and there's always an air of excitement. And the humor aspect comes into play as well. You know, I can think of the silly things that my son does that I relish. I can think of a situation in particular where, for example, he decided he was having a bath and wanted to clean the inside of the bathtub, and he grabs an entire box of Kleenex and brings it into the bathtub with him and decides to clean the bathtub. You know, looking back upon those moments, even though they were a bit frustrating at the time, those moments are something to really treasure.
Yeah, absolutely. So he brought the whole box into the bath with him when the bath water,
I kid
and
you
took
not.
out all the Kleenex out of the box.
He began wiping down the inside of the bathtub, and you can imagine the mess in terms of trying to get that out. So there's an innocence that comes with having a child with special needs, and that innocence is something to treasure. There's unconditional love too. One thing I really, really celebrate about my son is all the hugs that he gives. And I know that they are wholehearted, and being able to reciprocate and know that he feels that love as well. It's so special. It's so special. That bond, I think, is super, super strong, and something I would never want to let go of ever.
Yeah, and it's that true, unconditional, irreplaceable love that you can only feel with your child like that.
Totally. And there's the idea of awe, the sense of awe. I mean, the sense of awe with regards to watching a child develop, but there's also the sense of awe that your child has in experiencing new experiences. For my son in particular, you know, when he discovers something, his eyes just brighten up. They just light up. And it can be something so simple that many of us would take for granted and not even pay attention to. For him, one of his favorite pastimes is throwing rocks in rivers, and he could sit and he could do that for hours, and he is so happy at the end of it. Just so happy. It's that mindfulness, I guess. It's fascinating, right? And it seems like that has a powerful impact on you as a grown-up, as an adult, as a parent, right? To be a part of that, enjoying that with him, and get into his world, and kind of taste some of that mindfulness. Oh, totally. Totally. It forces you to slow down in some ways. Forces you to appreciate those special moments a little bit more. As as I think we can all relate to, there's a lot of pressure in our society to keep up with the Joneses, to be on the go, and to be involved in this activity or that activity. But taking that time to be able to slow down and play, it's really something that needs to be treasured.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome. So you kind of did talk about, Eric, about some of the feelings and the energy that expends from us when our child is first diagnosed with a disability, and what that's like, right? And how hard that is for all parents who have a child with disability. Is getting that diagnosis can be very emotionally heavy. What kind of advice might you give to parents who think that their kids may have a disability, right? Or they were just diagnosed with a disability?
Those are really good questions. Really good questions. You know, when it comes to suspecting a disability, I would say go with your gut. If you think that something isn't quite right, definitely get it checked. Definitely make those consultations to try to establish whether or not something is out of the ordinary. And that's an intimidating process in itself. It's often a time-consuming process. It can involve many different professionals. So beyond, allowing yourself or permitting yourself to expend the time and energy to explore, to meet with those different professionals, also acknowledging your courage in doing so. That's profoundly important. In terms of exploring whether or not a child has a disability, it's not an easy process. And for those parents who have had a child who's been recently diagnosed, I recommend the idea of pausing. Just pausing for a moment and reflecting and acknowledging those feelings that are associated with that diagnosis. Often there's shock, a feeling of helplessness. And in many cases, parents will feel an instinctive need or pressure to try to fix. How can we fix it? So my child has this, shall we say, a label at this moment in time. Well, what can I do to fix this?
Right.
And I think that's a pretty natural response.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's also a response that we can get lost in.
Right.
By getting lost in that line of thinking, again, we lose out on the here and now moment.
Right.
And in some cases, there are things that can be done to help, and then there are things that we just have to wait and see. We need to see how our child unfolds developmentally. And that's a hard thing, because we can give vague predictors as professionals, but we can't see the future. And helping parents feel, I'm trying to think of the word here, helping parents feel like they should be looking forward to good things. That's important. And knowing that a diagnosis is not, does not predict the future, it does not set a path in stone. It's a guideline. With regards to things like labels, many people are afraid of labels, and because labels come with stigma, and labels are a way of, I guess, validating concerns and validating or legitimizing, I guess, fear in a way too. On the one hand, but on the other hand, I like to think of labels as also a necessary evil. Because for a lot of people who are in the process of trying to undergo various types of diagnostic assessments, sometimes that label brings hope too. And, you know, if I can quote Winston Churchill, parallel quote Winston Churchill, he states that democracy is the worst form of government, but it's better than all the others. And I like to think of labeling as along the same lines. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's the best thing we can do at this point in time to make sure we get services for our children.
I think I just wanted to intercede there. I think I agree with you that the labels, can have a negative edge of it with stigma, and especially I think if parents hold on to that, and the child holds on to that for the rest of their life, and it becomes their identity for sure, right? So I appreciate looking back on, okay, my child is not ADD, my child is not this or that, my child is a person, my child is a kid with this, right? I mean, this is it's a part of them, but it's not them. Do you know what I mean?
It doesn't define them.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. But yeah, I also see your point that definitely there's hope there, and it can open a lot of doors.
It certainly can. It certainly can. And sometimes those doors are scary in some respects. Sometimes it's scary as a parent to think that, okay, my child has this label and now they're going to be qualifying for different types of supports. And what are those supports going to look like? Am I going to be involved in those supports? Am I going to be involved in decision making? So there can be fear associated with the process, even moving beyond diagnosis. I think, again, as I've already stated, acknowledging those feelings is so important as a parent. Acknowledging that fear, acknowledging that worry, and doing so in a way that you feel safe and supported. And it's very important.
Absolutely. The other concern I've heard a lot, Eric, especially from parents of children who think that their child might have ADHD and they don't want to get them diagnosed or assessed, is meds, and not in their kids do. And they fear that, okay, if he gets this diagnosis, he's got to go on meds, and we don't like meds.
Well, there is no set law in terms of medical intervention in most cases. In some cases, if you have somebody who requires a feeding tube, that's not optional. Medication for various types of behavior disorders is controversial. And I think as parents, it's important to explore and to educate yourself to the best of your ability, and to consult with people if you're not sure where to go for information. But take time to listen to the physician, to the pediatrician, to the psychiatrist, whoever it might be that might be suggesting the medication, and also allowing yourself to express and be vulnerable about what are your concerns. because those concerns are important to be heard on the part of the professions. The stigma piece is a big part of parental worries about medication, and also about the long-term consequences of my child being on a medication, and that's something that needs to be discussed with physicians as well.
Right.
So making time for that consultation piece, and also being able to talk to other parents who are in similar situations, I think can be very valuable in terms of helping decision making and seeing other perspectives.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, this is really enlightening and helpful conversations we're having this morning, Eric. So again, we're here with Eric Burgess on Real Dads with Brad Moser, and we're talking about parenting children with disabilities. This is great information for all parents, including those parents with children with disabilities, or if you suspect your child might have a disability. Also for people who work with parents or children with disabilities. My last question for you, Eric, is where can people find you?
People can find me at Restless Minds Counseling, and it's all one word, at gmail.com. They can also find me on Psychology Today. You can look me up by Restless Minds Counseling or by my name, Eric Burgess. And it has an overview of the services that I provide. And one of the areas that I'm wanting to specialize in is providing support, especially emotional support, for parents of children with disabilities. As I think while we dedicate all kinds of resources to our children, often we don't think about accessing those resources ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think for all parents, irrespective of who you reach out to, it's important to reach out to somebody. That's so you know you're not in this alone.
Absolutely. And then you did talk before, Eric, about the importance of advocacy and the role of a parent with a child with a disability as an advocate. And I think there's also advocate for you as a parent.
Definitely. Definitely. And that is self-advocacy that will come out that will make that happen.
Yeah, and by being a self-advocate, you're being a positive role model for your child as well. So as they grow up, they can learn to advocate for themselves.
By all means. And by seeking supports as an adult or a parent of a child with a disability, it also allows you to have a breath of fresh air in a way, to know that, hey, I can get support, and acknowledging the importance of that support is in the end, I firmly believe that by meeting our own needs, it will make us better parents as well.
Absolutely. Okay, great. It's been a great half hour to spend with you, Eric, this morning. So again, I'm here with my guest, Eric Burgess, a registered provisional psychologist for parenting children with disabilities. Thanks again for being on the show, Eric.
Thank you, Brad. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, it's great. And I'll have to touch base with you later for sure. But thanks again for joining us, everybody. Real Dads with Brad Moser, and we are the last Tuesday morning of every month at 10:30 a.m. So join us next month, July. It's in July. It's last Tuesday of July. So check us there. And otherwise, take care. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, take care, everyone.
Thanks, Eric. See you guys.